Hi, welcome to another video. We are talking today about industrialization in the United States, beginning our industrialization unit. The big theme of this unit is the emergence of big business and the way that our big business relates to the government and how that changes our society as a whole. So we're kind of moving towards the big movers and shakers of the United States in the late 1800s. Some big names like Carnegie and Morgan to talk about. But first, we have to understand what is unique about the United States industrialization process and why we were able to become a global powerhouse in terms of our industrial economy. All right. So, what was necessary for industrial growth, right? First off, you need a large population. You have to have consumers of new products. You have to have a large workforce, and immigrant labor is going to provide both of those things, right? So in the late 1800s, we see a large amount of new immigration coming to the United States. And towards the end of the 1800s from new places, which leads to its own cultural backlash that we'll get to later on, right? But we have a large workforce, a lot of consumers purchasing these things, right? We also have a lot of raw resources in our empire. We have plenty of food to feed people, thanks to the wheat belt and our Midwestern farms. We have plenty of raw resources such as like iron, lumber, coal, oil, copper, all those things to help us make steel, to help us make modern industrial factories, okay? And then we have the ability to ship all that raw material and those new goods that we're making all over the United States. The completion of the Transcontinental Railroad expands our markets, right? And that allows for big business to emerge. Now, instead of having a local market where you can only sell to people in your region, you have the ability to sell all across the United States. In fact, we see the first instance of that with the Sears catalog. And you're all probably too young to remember the Sears catalog, but when I was young, we would actually get the Sears catalog and we'd go circle the things we wanted for Christmas, and then grandma would buy them for us. It's basically Amazon. That's what, like the Transcontinental Railroad is basically the internet. And it expands our markets. Where now, because of the internet, a local store can sell something to anyone all across the world, right? Well, this was what the Transcontinental Railroad allowed stores to do. And so these big businesses with the ability to make a large amount of goods and then sell them all across the United States emerge. They have a significant advantage over small businesses. And we'll talk more about that later on when we look at our vocab words, okay? So the railroad is a major part of this, able to expand the market, ship our unfinished goods, ship our finished goods, right? And then we also need something to buy. We have these new products and inventions. We have all kinds of innovations coming out in the late 1800s, thanks to our ability to get these raw resources and then mass produce. So these investors and entrepreneurs who help get these new ideas a market, right? So you have that Eastern banks still very much in control. You have these new investors that get propped up and then they sell these goods that people want, right? So all of this feeds a growing economy. People wanting to buy stuff, having new things to buy. So you have a large amount of demand, but you have supply that can meet that demand. And if you have enough supply, you can lower the cost, which drives even more demand, right? And you have the ability to ship it, okay? Plus, all these people are being employed by these new big businesses, which although they aren't treated well and they aren't getting enough money, they are getting an income, and then they are purchasing these goods too. So the whole economy is functioning quite well in the late 1800s, even in spite of some things, right? And then I mean, this kind of brings us to a major theme. Like, is it the government interventions that help spur this on? Like, could this have been done without the government? So like the government during this time was passing protective tariffs, right? So these tariffs are taxed on imports and exports, and we were passing tariffs against other countries so that our new emerging businesses could compete with them. Andrew Carnegie, a Scottish immigrant, basically rips off his production of steel, his Bessemer method of producing steel, but he doesn't have to compete with people who are already doing that because of protective tariffs, right? And so that allows American industry to grow and emerge. Plus, the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad only happened because the government made that happen. They passed the Pacific Railway Act, and they gave basically large swaths of land to these railroads so they could sell and raise the capital, right? So we have a large amount of government intervention in this process. But at the same time, we have a large amount of government turning the other way and not looking at kind of how the sausage is made. But they have a very laissez-faire attitude towards regulation. Oh, coach, you just ruined my video. I'm just gonna leave this in there. Thanks. You want to say hi to the students watching me on the internet?
You got somebody watching you?
No, I will. I'm recording it.
Woo! Let's go!
Go Bobcats. All right. Thank you. Okay. Anyway, where was I? All right. So laissez-faire is a fancy French word for the free market. Okay. In some translations, hands off, right? So the government's hands are off the market. And basically, we have these large businesses that seize power, right? And they get favors from the government. So it's not really laissez-faire, right? They're getting favors from the government, but those favors sometimes mean don't regulate. Let the businesses in the market handle what it needs to handle efficiently. And so a lot of historians will, look at the role of the government in the late 1800s and draw different conclusions. And they'll also look at the corruption of big businesses and draw different conclusions on that. It's probably not wise to try to turn a modern day economic philosophy from the late 1800s only. You're going to need to use the Great Depression and 1970s stagflation and the 2008 financial crisis to form like a really good, like, here's what we should be doing in 2021 with our economy. But nonetheless, looking back, how does change happen? How do industrial revolutions happen, right? Having a large central authority that can provide resources and do things that maybe big business can't do on its own, like build a transcontinental railroad, certainly helps. It doesn't hurt. But at the same time, as we've seen in other places, a largely centralized government can industrialize a nation, but that usually comes with other problems, like forced starvation. So that being said, the government's role in this is kind of tricky, but we do know that big businesses were largely unregulated and they were allowed to monopolize while also using the central government's ability there. So that's it for today's video. Shout out to Coach Goodchild for his cameo. We'll see you in the next one.